Hello everyone, welcome to Tuesday Tea Time. I am out here in the pasture with my horses, and today I am actually pulling old rusty fencing out of the bushes, because when you live on a very old farm, you constantly find pieces of old fencing that need to be taken out. So I'm out here with my trusty chainsaw and my wire clippers, and I am working today. But there's always time for tea time. So whether you guys are watching it live or whether you're coming to watch the replay, welcome. Welcome, Christina. So I wanted to talk today, as I'm pulling out old fences, I am struck with this thought running around my brain of what does it take to build new habits or to replace old habits? Most of everything horses do is built on a habitual pattern. And certainly they do new things, but they do less new things than you imagine. They do a lot of things that they did yesterday, or last week, or last month, or last year. A lot of their life is built on habitual patterns. So this is why I believe training is natural. Training is always happening. Training is something that builds better habits for the future if the horse is in the right frame of mind. So when we train horses to be good partners for people, we are going to think about what it is that we want them to do. And then we're going to try and set up the circumstances so they do the things that we like. Hey, Raz. Hey, Sassafras. You guys coming to visit? So, I love that Sassafras came to visit me. I am going to make sure that my pile of old fencing is out of the way so that he won't get caught in it. But I love that he came to visit. And if I want him to visit more often, if I want this to be a habit for him, then the best thing for me to do is make sure that I'm just really quiet and really still while he's using his sensory system and enjoying the results. He came to see me, he smelled things, he looked at things, he enjoyed things through his sensory system. That's going to give him a stronger memory of it. It will either give him a stronger memory of it to do it again or to avoid it, depending on if the senses were tickled in a good way or overwhelmed. Now, at a certain point, he pulled away. If I really wanted to train that, I would have pulled away first, because horses really want things that they don't have enough of. I'm talking to you guys. I'm doing tea time. It wasn't particularly important to me to train Sassafras to come to me more often. But if that had been a particularly important thing, I would have wanted to leave him wanting more of it instead of wanting less of it. So that's sort of a basic theory of it. The thing that's been coming up in conversations with a lot of my students recently is this idea that we would like to strengthen some habits and let go of some habits. There are some things your horses do that you don't like, such as getting irritated at things that have to happen, or being afraid when they really don't need to be afraid. So those are habits, just like anything else, that they can let go of. But there can't be a void there. They have to replace those habits with something else. So a stress level pattern is also a habit. So some horses are very high stress and they have a really good reason to be high stress. Their life is not very good. They're really in survival mode, and that's a good reason to be high stress. But then life circumstances can change, and you'll find those horses are often still in a very high stress state because now they have a habit of it and they haven't replaced the habit with a more functional state yet. So this is something that we want to think about a little bit. Is the horse actually behaving in a way that is really functional for them? If they are not behaving in a way that's very functional, then they're practicing habits from a time when it was functional. And we often want to replace those with different habits. Okay. Another example is resisting the things that humans ask them to do. So if you ask your horse to back up a few steps, do they say, yeah, I'd love to? Do they do it, but they don't use any of their sensory system? Or do they refuse to move? Or do they push into you or pull away? So those are a bunch of options depending on how high their habitual stress level is around being asked to back up. So once upon a time, they were asked to back up. How did they feel about it? That's going to create a memory. And that memory is going to inform their habits. So if they were asked to be back up and they felt terrible and the result was not good, they're going to resist it more next time, which means more push, more pull, more fight, more flight. And every time you ask your horse to do something that ends badly, you are going to put them in a habitual state where they are more likely to push and pull and have fight or flight. Okay? The more we practice it, the more ingrained it becomes. So how do you change the habit? Well, you change the habit by practicing the same thing, or half of the same thing, or a quarter of the same thing, or an eighth of the same thing. How small do you need to go? You take the thing that they have a bad habit about, and I just mean something that makes them unhappy. Fight, flight, push, pull, anything that causes them to feel bad. You take that thing. Does half of it make them feel bad? Does half of that make them feel bad? Okay, how small do we have to make it so that it can be at least neutral, hopefully even good? So right here you got Atlas. He's itching his head on the bushes, okay? And then you see him lick and chew and roll his tongue around his mouth. And then he itches his face on the bushes again, okay? He is using his sensory system in a really good way. That's going to be linked to this place in the pasture. He's going to want to visit this place again. Hopefully it's going to be linked to hanging out with me while I do tea time with you guys. Okay? He is using his sensory system in a way that feels good. Now, hopefully, at some point, he'll take a pause. So as Ari walked by, you can see Atlas pause. And as he just pauses there, that's where the memory gets set. That's where he remembers how good he felt in that moment. Okay, so we're always going through cycles where they feel something, they process it. They feel something, they process it. Now, sometimes if it doesn't feel safe or it feels overwhelming or it feels irritating, they'll go from feeling right to overreacting. Okay, now Alice is going to go ahead and follow Ari. They're going to go off to the next place and they're going to hopefully start another cycle. Feeling some things, processing them, and developing habits of what they want to repeat. You also will have habits where they find things they don't want to repeat. Touching an electric fence would be an option that's like that. If they touch the electric fence, hopefully they remember they don't want to repeat that and they avoid it. So these are all building habits. Hopefully as they get older, they stop touching the electric fence. Like that's an ingrained habit now. Can we rebuild? So when they're, the electric fence, there's a certain amount of like pain or trauma involved where they get really scared or really startled. I know when I touch an electric fence, I feel really shocked. I don't want to do it again. Could I teach myself to like that feeling? Probably, but it's not worth it. It's not worth doing it. How would I do it if I wanted to change my habits around that? What we do is we break it in half, break it in half, break it in half again, break it in half again. How small does it need to be for it either to be a neutral experience or an enjoyable experience? Then you need repetitions. Okay, so this is where I'm finding a lot of my students sort of are having an aha moment where they realize that just because you do something once doesn't mean it's now a habit. Sometimes it takes many times, particularly if it's not a strong feeling. So if it was a really strong feeling associated with something, then you don't need very many repetitions. This is why food rewards are so powerful, because there's very strong feeling associated with them. This is why really harsh training is really effective. Obviously, I don't do either of those. So I'm going to go with the lower efficacy training, but higher repetitions. So let me give you an example. If I go ahead and stroke my horse's neck, I expect them to use their senses. Okay, I want to see an ear flick. I want to see an eye turn. I want to see them take a deep breath. I want to see my horses feel or see or hear or smell something in response to me stroking their neck. If they don't, let's just say they just ignore me. They're having a neutral experience. They're not really using their sensory system, but they're not really objecting to it either. They're not pushing away. They're not pulling. So I can then decide, okay, do I keep going? So do I keep stroking their neck until they have a sensory experience? Or do I need to do some different action? The reason to do something different would be that if I keep stroking their neck, they're going to pull away from me or they're going to push into me. I don't want to cause habits of pushing or pulling. I want to cause habits of cooperation. So it's really important that I know when to switch from stroking their neck to doing something else before I cause that push and a pull, because I don't want that push and a pull to be a habit. So we're going to go ahead and take actions that cause a sensory experience. Then hopefully we're going to pause and allow the horse to process that memory and hold on to it. That's the beginning of forming a habit. Then we need repetitions. How many times can we do that? So the repetitions are very, very important when you have a very low stress or low feeling response to something. So it's low intensity. It's going to take a lot more repetitions to build a habit. That's the way I like to train. I think it's more powerful and deeper to do repetitions. So if I stroke their neck, I expect them to use their sensory system. It doesn't mean I have to stop stroking their neck if they flick their ear. I can keep stroking their neck until they flick their ear 20 times, 30 times. What's going to happen is they use their sensory system and their brain is going to start to fatigue. And as their brain starts to fatigue, you're going to get longer and longer moments between sensory experiences. And these are the little freeze states that I talk about. So when horses freeze up a little bit, their brain is tired and their brain is just resting. We want to pause at a time when their brain is active, when they're using their sensory system, because we want them to remember that part. We don't want them to remember the freeze part so much. We want them to remember the actively thinking and feeling part. Then, when we are stroking their neck or whatever you're doing, you're going to see where their brain gets tired. And you're going to be like that fitness coach that says, okay, you can do one more rep. I know you can do one more rep. I'm going to keep going. And you're going to feel like the last focus change or two is hard for them. And then you're going to rest. This is how habits get stronger. Just the way muscles get stronger by doing one more repetition. What you push through just a little bit at the end when it gets difficult. So most of what I train in freedom-based training is mental and emotional strength. The physical stuff is so easy once you get the mental and emotional strength. Most trainers will do it the other way around. They'll train physical strength first, and then they'll build into the mental and emotional strength. I don't think one's wrong and one's right. It's just that if you're going to train without tools and without food rewards, you have to do mental and emotional first. So that's how I train. Now, I gave the example of stroking a horse's neck, but it could be also the example of backing them up or yielding the front end or asking them to turn a circle or cantering them up a hill, or anything that you do is gonna go through cycles of curiosity and comfort. And the curiosity looks like an active sensory system. The comfort looks like there's nothing really coming in through their eyes or their ears or their nose. Everything goes still for a moment. And they're gonna go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You can do many, many repetitions of the same thing. Many backup steps, many turning steps, many gallop steps, many focus changes, whatever it is that you're asking for, you can do many, many reps, but you're going to find a time when the brain gets tired. And then when the brain gets tired, you're going to see if they can do 1 or 2 more reps, and then you're going to rest and recover. Let them set that memory. This is how we build new habits. If you have the right tools, you can train physically first and mentally and emotionally second. If you take away all the tools, we've got to build mentally and emotionally first and physically second. So I hope that that's helpful, you guys. I'm going to keep tea time pretty short today because I have old metal fencing I've got to go rip out of the bushes before I leave for Australia. I'm going to scroll back here. I think I got a comment that I missed. Yulia says, I finally managed to join the live meeting. I'm glad you're here. Amy's here from California. Thank you guys for joining me. I know I was a little bit earlier today. I am honestly out here with my phone and no battery, and I realized my phone was going to run out of power by the later time I usually do. So I thought, better do it now while I still have my phone on and I can talk to you guys. And then I'm going to spend the rest of the day pulling fence out. Next week, I will be in Australia. I will be on the West Coast for the first week. Then I'll be doing a couple of demos at Equitana in Melbourne. So if you want to join me there, I'll be there performing on Thursday and Friday in the afternoon. And then I'll be doing a clinic in Canberra and 1 in Tasmania and 2 in Victoria. And I'd love to see you guys there if you happen to be in Australia. Then I will be home in January. I'll be home for most of January and February and starting up my new and improved online course that I am changing yet again because I love to make it better. So I hope you guys enjoyed the theories from Tea Time today. Let me know if you want to dive deeper into any of these. I'd love to support you, and I hope you have a wonderful time today. And thank you, Del. I love my travels to Australia. I'm sure it'll be good. And thank you, Meg. It's really fun to play with ideas. I find on Tuesdays before tea time, I definitely get a little meditative, and I think, what am I thinking deeply about this week? Would it help anybody else? I don't know. Maybe. Thank you, guys. I'm going to go fix fence. You have a wonderful day, and I will look forward to talking to you next week.